In this riveting video, I will tell you a story that will leave you in shock. An adulterous wife in which she spits on absolutely everything. Her husband, her family, her promises. Get ready for startling details, unexplained actions, and unpredictable consequences. Go forth into a world of amazing stories of cheating wives and dramatic events that ruin lives. To say that this year has been a bad one for Boris is not to say anything. The problems began back in February when he was asked out of his job. The director of the museum never liked the modest young man. He seemed to know the history well, clever, well-read, but some kind of lack of initiative. It was not in him the same charisma, and she had to make room for her son, who was supposed to get a diploma by summer and go to work now. All in all, everything was heading for dismissal long ago. Boris felt it. He long remembered that cloudy day at work when he heard from his boss. "I think it's time for us to part ways. Start looking for something else." Boris walked home in his washed-out cheap jacket and wondered where he was going to go now, how long it would take him to find a new job, and how to live on his mother's disability pension alone. He realized that historians in the city pretty pond and unlikely to find a good place in his specialty. Saving Boris from the negative state of Ver, a cute girl from next door. They had met on New Year's Eve, and Boris's mother also knew her and liked her very much when she came to visit. Always smiling, positive, she would bring a pie or show off her new clothes. Mom really wanted Vera and Boris to start a closer communication, and so they did. Every night they played chess, watched movies, or just chatted. All day long, Boris hesitated to kiss her, like a schoolboy, but then a miracle happened. He was overjoyed and was already thinking about asking Vera to live with them, so his mother would not be bored, and he could help with the housework. Except that Vera did not work, and as if she was not going to. She had finished college and was sitting at home, but Boris believed that he could not find better girls, so he had to take them. Mom was a little wary of the idea of Vera moving out. "Boris, you should take your time. You need to get to know each other better. We've only known each other for 2 months. What kind of life is that?" "Mom, I'm 25 years old. I need to start a serious relationship, and so everyone is laughing that I live with my mother. I don't want to lose such a girl. Remember how it turned out with Nastya back then. Oh, Sonny, look for yourself, of course, but now you also have a bad job. What to live on? It's all right. It's just temporary difficulties. We'll get through it. As soon as I find a job, Vera will move in with us." "All right," said my mother, realizing that Boris had long since made up his own mind. He was a man after all. The young man had to get a job in a jewelry shop. There was nothing else suitable. They paid a penny, but the owner promised to pay a percentage of the profits over time if the number of customers increased. Boris quickly learned the basics of repair work, and he and his partner began to divide the order by halves. The guy liked his work, no nerves, quiet, unhurried. Bosses came only in the evening, but otherwise they were left to their own devices. Only customers came by one, and that was all. Boris's eyes, of course, got terribly tired during the day, but he had to get used to it. He invited Vera to live with him, just as he had planned. The girl was very surprised at the proposal, but did not refuse, promised to think about it, and the next day during a walk said that she agreed. A bright streak began briefly in Boris's life. His work suited him. He and his partner were friends. The guy had a lot to learn from him. At home, peace and order. Boris came home every day from work to the laid table, everything tasty and fresh, cooked by his mother and his beloved Veroshka. He told them about his clients, and they listened attentively, laughing, joking. Then Boris would go to his and Vera's room to rest, and his girlfriend would clean the kitchen. Well, and then the evening, as usual, walks, chess, movies, talking until midnight. Boris admired Vera and realized that he loved her more and more every day, that he was ready to do a lot for her. She looked back at him with her beautiful green eyes and smiled, simply because she could not live without a smile. A very positive and bright girl. What a wonderful girl she is. What does she see in me anyway? Lucky fool, thought Boris to himself. He really thought meeting her was a huge success. Boris came up with the idea of taking his grandmother's old ring, lying in his mother's casket, and melting it down for Vera, to inscribe something like "I love," and then this ring to present to her with a marriage proposal. It was a problem for Boris to find time to execute this idea. There were lots of orders in their workshop, but he tried very hard. He decided that he would stay an hour every day. It didn't seem too time-consuming, but something could be done. Mother and Vera got on well together. The girl's easygoing nature made it easy for her to take care of everything. She helped out around the house and sat on the internet and entertained her mother-in-law-to-be and visited her friends every day. Vera was not worried that she was not working, but sort of sitting on the neck of her boyfriend, not even her husband. She knew that without her in their apartment was gloomy and gray. Boris was already finishing a ring for his beloved, and he began to think more and more about children. Usually girls hasten events in their thoughts, but here he was, not even married yet to Vera, imagining how she would give him a baby boy, whom he would name after his grandfather, George. Boris did not yet know what news awaited him very soon. He had no idea that the faithful parents were not thrilled about her new life. The girl said that her mother and father were calm about her move, but that was not at all the case. Especially when her ex-boyfriend, the handsome Dima, returned from the army. He and Vera had once gone to college together, dated, but broke up. He went to another city, and then he was drafted into the army. Only parents on both sides believed that young people were meant for each other. Dima himself did not forget his faith during the service. I wanted to write on the internet, but I didn't. On his return home, he visited her. True, he was taken aback by the news that she had moved, but Vera's parents immediately reassured Dima. She moved in with some loser, but it won't last long, probably despite you. And the young man calmed down, assuming that after a couple of his visits to Vera's apartment, she would not resist him and return. Of course, Dima won over Boris by all parameters. Handsome, not poor, promising, confident. He served his time and immediately enrolled in correspondence courses in order to have a high school diploma. His father bought him a car, which Rice would never have dreamed of. And Dima had the advantage that once Vera loved him very much. She had never felt such feelings for anyone before, so there was a chance for Dima to get it all back. Vera did not even blink an eye when she first saw her ex-boyfriend. Like, I now have my own life. But the second time her parents purposely left them alone with each other. Vera, you're still the same. Maybe she's had enough of this nonsense. Let's start all over again. Why, Dima, you couldn't decide what was more important to you, your friends or me. You wanted to go away somewhere. Well, that was when I realized everything. I never forgot about you for a minute. Remember how many great moments we had? Dima walked over to Vera, put his arm around her shoulders and stroked her hair. He smelled like expensive perfume. And Boris, usually something fried. Suddenly she thought, no, Dima, I do not understand why you say all this. Find yourself another girl and be happy with her. So I can't, since I'm here, whispered Dima. I love you. I just love you. Vera felt uncomfortable. He kept stroking her head. He doesn't care at all that I live with someone else. He's confident in his power. A thought flashed through Vera's mind. She went home to Boris and his mother. Everything was mixed up in her mind. Dima was better at everything. And he had come for her, and with Boris, she would have nothing. The girl had changed from the moment Dima appeared on the horizon. She had been talkative before, but now she was lost in thought. Her old feelings were awakened in Vera. Or maybe it was just a desire for profit. Boris noticed this, but did not pay attention. The young man hurried home. He decided to propose to her today. He splurged on a beautiful bouquet of tulips, and in his pocket was the very ring with engraving. On the way, he bought a small cake and a bottle of celebratory. It was just for him and Vera, and his mother would have tea too. Vera had been walking around Sirius all day, and she did not greet Boris in a very friendly way. She wasn't happy about the flowers, but that didn't embarrass the guy. Mother, on the other hand, was very cheerful, and he chalked Vera's bad mood up to the weather. It had been overcast and damp all day, and she wanted it to be summer already. They drank tea, and Boris called Vera to follow him into their room. She sat down next to me with a displeased look. "Vera, my kitten, I'm worried. In short, I want you to marry me." Vera paled. He took her hand and put on a simple ring with the inscription, "I love you, Vera." The girl was embarrassed. A month ago, she would have smiled, kissed him, and promised to think about it. Now she wanted nothing at all. Boris, against the backdrop of Dima's return, seemed so pathetic to her. But after all, pity was not the best feeling for a man. Boris, without waiting for an answer, began to passionately kiss Vera, but she pushed him. "What is it, Vera?" He was surprised. "Nothing. You're in a hurry." "We don't know each other very well yet." Boris grinned. "It's okay that we live together. And no one's telling us to get married tomorrow. We could have a wedding in the fall. There's no money right now anyway. I just really wanted to confess to you and give you this gift." Vera looked at the ring and felt nauseous. From everything. From herself. No, she did not love Boria, and moved for the bar for the sake. The girl returned to the kitchen and drank water. Boris put the bottle aside and followed her. He realized that Vera was not at all happy about his proposal and did not want to marry him. "Vera, I'm not pressuring you. Let's live like we used to. What are you afraid of? We'll get married in a year. What's the rush? We're young. There's plenty of time. The main thing is that I love you." He pulled her to him, but she pushed him away again and ran back into the other room. Boris sat down in a chair and wondered, what was wrong? 10 minutes later, a crying Vera appeared with a bag. "I am going out. Forgive me, please. I want nothing more. Goodbye." She put the ring in front of him and left. Her mother looked out of her room, stunned by what had happened. No one really understood what it was. Vera, wiping away her tears, ran up the stairs of her apartment building. She was confused, and she needed to figure it all out. And maybe Dima was her man, but not Boris. And Boris, trampled, poured himself a woman's drink. His mother looked at him and cried. "Boris, what is it? What happened between you two?" "Nothing. Nothing happened between us. I guess she's bored." "What do you mean, bored? What are you talking about?" "Yes, I am, Mom." He quickly disposed of the bottle and went to his room. He fell down on the bed and lay there till nightfall. At night, he tried to text her on Messenger, but was blocked. "Yeah, that's Verochka," he thought. Boris could not calm down for a long time. He kept waiting to meet her, but Vera vanished into thin air. It turned out that she had gone to her relatives, along with Dima. Boris had been grieving for her all summer. It was especially bitter to think of Vera in silence while he was working. The pain only began to subside with the splint. A very difficult year. Well, I would like to say, my dear listeners, if you like this story, be sure to give me some likes. Write a comment what you think. In the meantime, I will share my thoughts. Here's how the author writes, a very difficult year. Well, let me put it this way. If Boris doesn't change anything in his head, and the man is already 25, he is a real man, he will have a very hard life, and not just a year. Isn't it? I think you agree. If not, we can discuss. But if you think about it that way, He's absolutely wrong, yet that's his phrase. Yeah, that's a Verochka. Man, yeah, that's Boreshka. Because you decided that the girl you like to bring home, well, I understand everyone's situation is different. But we live in a time when a man who strives for a goal, the goal of making money, because it's the main thing now, yes, he can get a job. It's okay. So what if you have a degree in history? I mean, it's somehow strange. First he says that he will not find a job in his specialty. Then he goes and gets a job in a jewelry shop, as if what could not go with some salesman, some consultant, build a career in sales, you can make money there. It is a well-known fact. But Boris decided to live with his mother and tell Vera what a smart girl she is, that he loves her. Yes, of course, the step with the melted ring of his late grandmother, kind of deceased. I apologize if I'm wrong. It's certainly beautiful, it's very nice, but in the context of the whole situation of this surrealism that I drew in my head, imagining their way of life, God, a young girl, cheerful, bright, she needs something else. She needs a man, which apparently is what Dima was. And it's not just about money. The money is only an indicator of some status and probably, rather, no, security, and with Boris, well, who would feel safe, right? And now onto the second story. After sticking up for my neighbor, I decided to check to see why my wife went to his place so often for salt. When I opened the door, I heard a short but unpleasant conversation that turned my life upside down. Get ready for an amazing story of cheating and dramatic twists of fate. I am 42, my wife is 40. My son is 18 in military school, was in school at the time of the events, now graduated, ranked and serving. We have been living together for 20 years. You cannot believe it, but we argued and quarreled only at the very beginning of family life. And then, as if rubbed up against each other, began to understand each other, and there was respect in the family. And of course trust, there is nothing without it. About 6 months ago, I began to notice that my wife became more active in bed. I am certainly pleased with this, but also alarmed. And one night in bed, my wife suggested that I try something to which she had previously been extremely negative, which surprised me very much. Naturally, I decided to ask her why she suddenly decided to change her standards and rules, to which she replied that time was passing, and she wanted to try. The weekend was coming up, and it was going to be my friend's birthday. Naturally, he invited my wife and I. For some reason, my wife was not too happy about the proposal, and on that day in the morning started cleaning and cooking. But I could not refuse. Wore a beautiful dress, stockings, which again surprised me. She wore stockings very rarely. And now the time is near, called the cab. My wife put on makeup and dressed, looking just terrific. I, in anticipation of the forest reviews and admiration for my wife from friends and acquaintances. Here comes the car. My wife hiccuped and ran into the kitchen. Turns out she forgot to turn off the borscht. Well, stuck in the kitchen. I have already called her, said, waiting for a cab. She jumped out, all smiling, and we left the apartment. Have left literally 300 meters. His wife declares that the borscht is not turned off, distracted. She says, "You go ahead, and I'll quickly run home, turn it off, and immediately after you." We stopped the car and she jumped out of it. At first I kind of agreed and we drove off. And then I think, how come? I wanted to show up with his wife, so everyone can see what a spectacular and beautiful woman I have. And I do not like to wait. You know, waiting and catching up is the most disgusting thing. So I tell the cab driver, turning back, let's go back and get his wife. He said it was no problem, but I'd have to pay 100 extra. I agreed. We got to the first intersection. The driver turned around, and we rushed back to the house. I quickly jump up to the 3rd floor, open the door, go into the corridor, call my wife. No one answers. Then I notice in the open bedroom door, my wife's clothes and her purse thrown on the bed. I thought maybe she went to the bathroom, but she wasn't there either. Calling and on the phone, I hear a ringing tone from her purse. I think, here's the thing. Things are here, but my wife isn't. Went to the kitchen just in case. Borscht on the stove, gas off. I wait 5 minutes, 10, 20 minutes. The driver is already calling. I think I'll go and let it go. I go down. I get down to the second floor and the situation is like in the movies or in a book. The door of one of the apartments opens and my wife comes out. And she is accompanied by a young neighbor, 27 years old. Married, by the way. For a few seconds, a silent scene. And then my wife says she went to get salt. And I answered her, so went, that hair disheveled and lipstick wiped off, and even in high-heeled shoes and stockings, huh. And why do we need salt when we were in the store together 2 days ago, and you just bought it? And where exactly is the salt that you went to get? My wife began to say something about the thyroid, about iodized salt, but I was not listening. I went downstairs, got in a cab, and drove to a friend's house for his birthday. I told my friend that my wife was sick and could not come, though she really wanted to. My wife kept calling me all night, but I didn't answer, and she probably didn't dare to come. After my birthday party, I went to a hotel, turned off the phone, and slept till the next afternoon. In the evening, I returned home. My wife greeted me with extreme concern and tried to kiss me, but I pulled away. Why did my wife express extreme bewilderment? She even had the nerve to ask me questions like, what happened? Why didn't I pick up the phone? Where have I been missing for almost 24 hours and so on? I wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with her. I asked her to tell me everything honestly. I'm not a 16-year-old boy who can be bullshitted. My wife refused to do anything, and even proudly gave me her phone to make sure there were no unauthorized numbers in her phone. Well, I said, I will not look into your phone. I would rather go to a neighbor for salt. Here, my wife became hysterical, but even at that moment, she did not confess to anything. And when I went to the door, she stood in my way and said that I could only go through her pipes. I just took my wife by the shoulders, lifted her off the floor, and moved her to another place. She was crying and literally fighting, not wanting to put me down. I still managed to get out of the apartment. There was no conversation with the neighbor. I just asked if they had had it a long time. Said that if he didn't answer, I'll tell his wife, and they have 2 children, with the youngest only a couple of months. It turned out to be almost 6 months. I wasn't interested in the rest. I was very hurt, bitter, and I was terribly angry. Wanted to make a scandal, wanted to yell and scream at his wife. And of course I wanted details, because my wife was not just suddenly interested, and not just interested in other kinds of lovemaking. I'm sure she first tried it with her lover, this young father of 2. How I restrained myself and didn't cause a scandal, I don't even know. Probably because my wife was quiet. First she sat in the bathroom, then in the kitchen, and then lay down in the bedroom and did not move. I think if she had said a word at that point, I would have burst out, and I'm sure I would have said a lot of bad things and a lot of unnecessary things to my wife. Naturally, we went to bed separately. We divorced. The reasons for the divorce stated, we did not agree in character. My wife went to live with my cousin. The apartment was my inheritance and was not subject to division. Dear listeners, if you liked this story, you have to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can do it directly under this clip. In order not to miss the video, you can also click on the bell. It will notify you about the new video. See you soon.